Hello everybody and welcome back to another Marvel Crisis Protocol character spotlight, and today we are taking a look at a model that I've been playing actually for a very long time and was kind of surprised to realize I hadn't already done a spotlight on, and that is going to be Mr. Parker Robbins, also known as Hood. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get right into him here. Alrighty, so starting things out, looking at the stat line here, Hood is coming in with a rather unimpressive stat line here. He's got 2, 2, 3, and only 5 stamina at 3 threat. So, nothing crazy on the stamina level, but definitely lower on the defensive stats here. So we're kind of looking at a kind of squishier baseline here, but he does have some kind of tricks to play with that. He's a size 2 and a medium mover, so nothing too special there. But of course, one of the special things about Hood is that he is one of the handful of transform models in the game, meaning he does switch to a possess mode as the game goes on and through various things. So we're going to be taking a look at both sides of his card, obviously his possessed and his normal side. But yeah, we'll start by looking at his normal side and we'll go from there. So on his normal side, he has 2 different attacks here. The first one is the Hex Shot. This is a range 3 4 dice mystic attack, so not too often you see that, especially on a lower threat character. After this attack is resolved, this character gains 1 power, and it's got a hit rapid fire trigger, allowing him to make an extra hex shot attack targeting the same character. So yeah, that's kind of cool. You get to throw out some mystic attacks. Range 3 isn't the worst. It's going to help. Not having to get into range 2 is going to help with that survivability a little bit more on those squishier stat lines there. And it is a gainer, so it's going to be fairly consistent in power gain. The hit trigger for rapid fire is pretty consistent too. So if you want to throw out a lot of attacks on a side that's typically a weaker side, already pretty good for that sort of thing here. But that isn't his only attack here, because he also has the Dark Lightning attack. Dark Lightning is going to be a Mystic Spender. This is also a range 3, so he's kind of got that clear range he wants to operate in here. It's going to be throwing 6 dice and is going to cost him 3 power. So, if you start your turn and you're already in that range 3, you could shoot. If you get the rapid fire, then you'll have enough power to do a Dark Lightning. Now, this does have a couple things on it as well. The first thing is the Wild Arc. After the attack is resolved, choose a number of enemy characters within 3 of the target equal to or less than the number of wilds in the attack roll. So if you roll 6 wilds, I guess you can pick 6 targets. The chosen character suffers 1 damage. So yeah, just a great way of throwing out some splash damage. Not the most consistent thing in the world on only 6 dice, but can be really nice when you do get it off. And obviously, if you have any ways of kind of improving those odds, really good for that as well. And he also has after the attack is resolved, the target character gains the shock. This is just automatic, so you don't need any symbols or anything for that. So that's always nice if you want to be able to throw out some debuffs on your opponent's team here, or if you're just looking to throw some extra dice. Yeah, solid attack here. That's it for his attack profiles here. He does have 3 superpowers, however. The first one is an active superpower, Black Arts. This is a 3 cost that says choose another allied character within range 3 of this character. The chosen character may remove up to 3 damage. If it does, the chosen character gains the Bleed special condition. A character may be affected by the superpower only once per round. Notably, it says a character can be affected only once per round, but you can use this more than once. You could choose multiple characters if you wanted to heal up a bunch of teammates, but it does specify another allied character, so you can't heal yourself. This is really good on characters that are immune to bleed, because the the healing part comes first. So any of your Ultrons, your Luke Cages, those sorts of models that have the immunity to the bleed condition, really good for healing them up. I'd have to check the wording on it, but I also think it would work really well with something like Apocalypse. I don't remember if he's immune to bleed on his front side, but on his flip side, where he's immune to all special conditions, you'd heal him for 3, and then I think by trying to give him bleed, you'd actually heal him for a 4th, but it might only be through enemy effects. So I'd have to check the wording on that one. But either way, still no downside to use it on him. So yeah, it's really good. Not too many characters have healing just kind of baked into their kit, so that's always nice to have. There's a little bit of a downside, but I mean, if the character proceeds to survive 3 more rounds to have now taken the damage from bleed that they would have taken from the actual damage, that's kind of fine. It's a range 3 heal that's 1-for-1 with power, so yeah, that's really good. I mean, that's arguably better than patch up in a lot of cases, so I'll take it. His next power here is his little bit of defensive tech. This is the Invisibility Cloak. This is a reactive superpower. It's going to cost you 2 power. That says when this character is targeted by an attack or would make a dodge roll. So nice, one of those ones you can use on dodge. this character uses its Mystic Defense to defend or dodge. So you can roll 3 dice, alright, not too bad. However, it also has, during this defense or dodge roll, this character adds blanks in its roll to its total successes. So that becomes really, really solid. I mean, 3 dice counting blanks is pretty good for a 3 threat. I definitely like the odds a lot better on that. So yeah, that's just generally pretty good. That takes those victim stats and makes them a little bit more resilient, especially since you do have pretty good power generation with that, rapid fire hex shot being fairly consistent there. So yeah, I definitely like that. However, if they do manage to break through your defenses, you do have this last superpower. This is a passive possessed by, and I'm going to butcher this, Nisanti, something like that. Not 100% sure. But when this character is damaged by an enemy effect, after the effect is resolved, this character may transform into possessed. If this character would be dazed before being dazed, it transforms into possessed as well. Then it is dazed. So basically, if you take damage for any reason, whether that's being thrown, something thrown at you, being attacked, obviously, splash damage, whatever. If it's from an enemy effect, you may transform into possessed, and if you would be dazed, you have to transform into possessed, then you get dazed. So let's go ahead and, first of all, just to confirm, there is nothing that changes on his flip side here, so we're not going to spend any time going through that. We're just going to go ahead and jump right over to the possessed form here. Alrighty, so over in the possessed form, our core stats stay the same here, but everything else is different, so we're going to have a whole new card basically to go through here. So, first of all, we've gained a physical close range attack. This is our new zero cost attack. We no longer have access to those pistols. We now have Razor Talons instead. This is a range 2 6 dice attack, so throwing a lot of attack dice for a 3 threat as a zero cost attack. After this attack is resolved, this character gains power equal to the damage dealt. So now it's a builder instead of a gainer. You lose a little bit of that consistency, but you do have the potential to spike, and with 6 dice, you have pretty good odds of doing damage usually. You've got a wild bleed on here, so you can hand out some bleed conditions, not bad. And then after this attack is resolved, if the target character is dazed or KO'd, you transform back into normal form. So if you get a kill with this attack, you have to transform back. So you got to keep that in mind when deciding how you're going to set your things up. If you wanted to stay in this mode, you want to maybe make sure you go after someone who you're fairly confident can take the hit. But also alternatively, if you want to transform out, use this attack on someone who's low on health, and hopefully you can manage to flip out. So yeah, depending which mode you want to be in for whatever reason. Because I do think one of the cool things with Hood is there's a good reason to be in either of his modes at any given time. One of them you can only kind of control so much, but going from possessed mode back to normal mode, there's a fair bit of options on how you go back. Speaking of ways to go back into normal mode, his other attack here is Empowered Dark Lightning. So this is very, very similar to the Dark Lightning attack in normal mode. This is going to be a 4 cost, so slightly more expensive. It's going to throw out 8 dice though, so a little bit more powerful at range 3, and it is once again a mystic attack. This is going to have the Empowered Arc trigger, which is the exact same as the Arc. You're going to pick a number of enemy characters equal to the number of wilds you have within 3 of the target, but this time, instead of only doing 1 damage, you're going to do 2 damage to each of those targets, which is actually really, really good for finishing off characters. I mean, 2 damage is, yeah, that's great. I mean, even a throw doesn't consistently do that, right? So, yeah, that's a really good way to finish off some characters that you have kind of low. After this attack is resolved, the target character is still going to be shocked, so you still got that automatic shock on there. However, the other thing is, after this attack is resolved, you're going to transform back into normal mode. No matter what happened here, whether you did real well, whether you didn't, you're going to switch back. So if you really want to go back to normal mode, I don't know, you want access to those pistols or something, maybe you had the power for this, but you weren't going to be in range to use your melee attacks, so you need that, or you want the healing. This is one way you can kind of guarantee you'll go back into normal mode here. So yeah, something to keep in mind when using it. It does mean you can't really ever double tap with this attack unless you kind of line something up for your opponent to damage you in between your 2 actions. Technically that could be a thing. You could transform back into normal and then they could like counter strike you and then you transform again. Weird timing things aside though, most of the time you're not going to get to use this attack twice in an activation because you'll have to transform back. And then, you can use the lesser one if you want on the other side. But yeah, so kind of just a powered up version, and at only 4 costs, throwing out 8 dice with that trigger there is pretty solid for a 3 threat, I think. Next, he has the charge superpower here. So this is just the standard charge. We've seen it a million times. It's going to be a 2 cost, and it's just going to be making a move action followed by an attack action. You can use this on your empowered Dark Lightning. I find more often than not it's being used on the Razor Talons just because of that range 2. You've kind of been operating at range 3 most of the game already. So this is great to get you into that range 2. You took some damage, you flipped over, now you have the power to charge, so you go on in and start doing your thing. So yeah, really, really good. Next, we get to one of my favorite superpowers on his card, Demonic Resilience. When this character would suffer damage from an enemy effect, reduce the amount suffered by 2 to a minimum of 1. One of the best damage reductions in the game. Being able to say reducing damage by 2 is crazy. I mean, it is to a minimum of 1, so, if they're doing damage, best case scenario, that's going to take 5 attacks to take them down. But or rather worst case scenario for them. But still, reduction by 2 is absolutely huge. It's massive for his survivability. Of course, you do have to be careful because he only gets into this form from the other side where he doesn't have that. So, if he flipped into this form taking 4 damage, then that's not really going to help him very much. But if you can get him into this form having only taken 1 or 2 damage, he can be really, really obnoxious to finish off, especially, if he's on his healthy side, he's contesting points and all that stuff. Yeah, he can do a lot of really, really rude things and be incredibly obnoxious to remove for a 3 threat. Charge to get back onto points and stuff like that if they try to displace him. So, yeah, he's really, really solid for that sort of game plan. And I think a lot of that comes from Demonic Resilience. You just got to be careful with how he's flipping over because, if he's only got 1 health, that damage reduction ain't gonna do much for him. And same deal, really. If he's only got 2, might spare him from being one shot, but still gonna probably go down in 2 because he does still have kind of those victim stats up there. The last thing on his card here is Mystic Vulnerability. So on our normal mode, we were best at Mystic. This time it is a weakness. While defending against a Mystic attack, this character does not add additional dice to its defense roll as a result of crit results. If this character is damaged by a Mystic attack after the attack is resolved, it transforms into Hood Normal. If this character would be dazed by a Mystic attack, before being dazed, it transforms into Hood Normal and then is dazed. So anytime you take any form of Mystic damage, you're going to jump right back over to normal mode. So that's one way your opponent can kind of force which mode you're into, so you're going to want to keep an eye out for that if your opponent has, a Mystic attacker, but even more specifically, a character that can choose to attack Mystic but has other attack types as well. They're going to have a lot of agency over what form Hood is in, so you want to kind of keep him away from them as much as humanly possible. But I mean, the can't explode crits thing does matter, but when you're only throwing 3 dice anyways, it's not going to actually change your defensive stats too much, and you will still have that demonic resilience for that attack at least. So there we have Hood. I really, really like Hood. I think he's a really unique piece. He's a great 3-threat Mystic attacker. He can be surprisingly bulky once you get him over to that possessed form again, as long as your opponent doesn't have too much control over which form he's in. He can be really, really solid in a lot of different scenarios. He's a fairly hard hitter for a 3-threat, again, specifically in that possessed form. But when you need him to kind of be, oh, that's not how you switch forms. When you need him to kind of sit back and shoot things and stuff, he can do that role pretty well as well. Healing is really, really good as well. Just, one of those things where, especially now with so many extra cards being added to restricted slots, being able to kind of say, no, we don't need patch up this game, we're going to bring Hood. He's kind of in a similar vein in terms of power economy for it. Of course, you lose some of that versatility of having, models anywhere on the board, but he is range 3, so if you can really take advantage of that, it can definitely be a really, really meaningful effect to have. And if you can put that on some bulkier models, it's super obnoxious to get through that. So yeah, a really, really solid superpower to have. And he can keep doing this. He can hit multiple characters. He can do it more than, only the same one once per round, but he can use it more than once per round. So yeah, he's a really, really important piece when you can kind of, make sure he has the power economy to do that, obviously. Maybe think about some leaderships that benefit that. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But I think he can be a really big piece as kind of he's going to sit here and heal up everything, but he's also really annoying for your opponent to deal with. And the transform is a May on this side, unless he gets dazed. So they can't even force you to transform him to possessed form. But if they do, then hey, now he's hitting like a truck. So I mean, I keep flipping the card instead of going to possessed form, but you guys know what I'm trying to say here. Now he's hitting like a truck. He's got this, empowered dark lightning. He's finishing off the opponent's characters. Yeah, just a really, really solid, kind of very versatile piece. The one thing you do have to watch for is that you do give your opponent a lot of that agency with when he's allowed to be in which form. So you're gonna have to keep an eye out for that. But still, just a really, really solid piece all around. Going into tactics cards, Hood has only one tactics card here. It's Hood's Gang, and I quite like this card. It can only be played during his normal form, so you're going to have to keep an eye on that. But it's an unaffiliated card, so even if you're splashing him, you are allowed to bring this card. And it says, this round, when an allied character is attacking an enemy character contesting or holding an objective token, the allied character may reroll one of its attack dice. So yeah, I think this card is really, really neat. It's kind of like an interdimensional bloodhound, but it's only a reroll instead of an extra die, which is worse, but it's free. So you kind of have that. It doesn't matter how much power he's on. You really need this thing dead. Well, now your entire team has a reroll against this thing. So pairs really, really well with some of the affiliated cards in some of the affiliations he's in. Most notably, I'm thinking of Dark Reign here, where you're getting full rerolls. So if you really want to be like, no, this model needs to go and he needs to go now, Hood's Gang is a great way to kind of help just be like, okay, maybe that model is a Hulk. It needs to die and you need everything you can do to help you do that. So we're going to take full rerolls. We're going to take this. You do have to play it during Hood's turn. So if that thing needs to die and Hood isn't the one you want killing it, that can be a slight problem for that sort of game plan. But it's, in my opinion, it's still a really, really solid card. I find a lot of the time it makes the 10, but sometimes it struggles to make the 5. It's one of those kind of edge cards, sometimes it's that 6th or 7th card. So whether or not it's seeing play too often, that might vary, but I do really, really like it. I think it's quite solid. I think it just kind of gets edged out by a few other cards, especially since some of the affiliations he plays in, or the ones where he's affiliated, can be pretty competitive for card slots. So unfortunately, it doesn't always make the cut, but I do think it is a quite solid card. Speaking of affiliations, he is a member of 2 different affiliations, those being Cabal and Criminal Syndicate. First one we'll take a look at here is Cabal, and I do like him a fair bit here. I mean, I kind of just like him in general, but I like him under a couple of the leaderships here. So we'll start with the OG here, Red Skull 1. If you damage an enemy character, you gain an extra power. I think this can be quite nice for him. He can definitely be a little power hungry. Those pistols having rapid fire too gives you more opportunities to potentially do that damage. In theory, you can gain 6 power in a turn if you do damage on all 4 pistol attacks. Not realistically going to be quite that strong every time. They are only 4 dicers, but you throw enough dice, you're bound to do damage with at least a couple of those attacks. So, it'll help him with that power economy, help him have those heals online a little bit more often. And then when he does flip over into that possessed form, you'll just kind of be able to go in a little bit harder with that, charge in, do your spender, all the things you want to do there. So yeah, I do really like him under that leadership. I actually think that's a really, really solid one for him. I like the other ones for the most part for him too. Sin isn't really a real leader, so we're not going to talk too much about that one, but I do think he's a really solid objective piece, and he does, especially once he's in that possessed form, he plays the objective game fairly well. He's going to be in your opponent's face for the asset side, and he's going to be able to get over to their contests secures with his charge and stuff as well. So I do like that. But also Sin isn't a real model, so we're not going to talk too much about that. Next we have Malekith here, and he's not going to be the best for this because half the time he's actively not trying to get kills, but he can be great for securing them with his empowered lightning or dark lightnings. There's dark lightning and empowered dark lightning. I'm already mixing up the names, but with those he can definitely secure some kills. So you can kind of play around with that, and there's some cool things you can do there. It can be kind of hard to set up, but you could even kind of try and do near the end of a round, intentionally have left like 2 or 3 models on 1 or 2 health, have Hood go in and just kind of start spendering to try and finish them off. And then if he gets, two or three of them, now suddenly two or three of your models are going to get two advanced shorten and gain power and heal, which can be great for just kind of saying, nope, this is my objective now. So because yeah, it doesn't say it can't happen more than once per turn. So if you can get a couple wilds at the same time and hey, there's two models dead, well, let's just, here, this secure is ours now. We were kind of close by, and now all of our guys are on it. So you can kind of do some fun stuff with that. Lastly, here you have Red Skull 3, and I mean, this is just a good leadership, in my opinion. I think this leadership works a little bit better on kind of single attacks versus rapid fires, so not the best for him, but can be really, really nice if you want to use it to just kind of increase your odds of getting those wilds. Turn a skull into a crit. Now here's another die. Maybe it's a wild. So it can be nice on the spender, but I don't think it's anything particularly special for him. So probably out of all the Cabal leaderships, probably the one that he benefits the least from, but it's still just a really, really good leadership, so can't really go wrong. As far as synergies with other models go, I think the big thing you're kind of looking for is models that are really going to benefit from his healing. So models with things like damage reductions or really good defensive tech, or models that are going to be immune to that bleed, so they'll get the full value out of it. So obviously Ultron being affiliated there is really solid. You got stuff like Ulik with the damage reduction, really really nice there. New crossbones, Zemo being able to heal Zemo, where especially if he's stuck in with those full rerolls on physical defense and things like that, can be really really good there. So I do like him with a handful of the models. I didn't mention it as well, but like Malekith being able to heal him can be pretty big. Omega Red as well. So handful of models you can really really get some mileage out of that healing with. Other than that, he's just a really solid mystic, low threat mystic attacker if you're just kind of looking for some extra coverage there. You do have some other solid mystic attackers in the affiliation, but I actually think he's probably one of the better ones, at least at the lower threat levels. So yeah, I think he's pretty good for Cabal. He supports them reasonably well, and there's a handful of models he likes running with there. Oh, I should also mention while we're on the on the Cabal list here, Zemo and Strucker both having well, what's it called? Strategic Genius? Yeah. Strategic Genius. Giving him a single reroll when you're making, potentially four attacks in a turn is pretty big. So being able to pair him with those models can also be really, really nice for stuff like that. And the other affiliation he is a member of here is the Criminal Syndicate. So, taking a look at the leaderships here, we'll start out with the original Kingpin, and I actually quite like him under Kingpin leadership. I think once he gets into that flip side, he can be really, really obnoxious to remove from a point, and Kingpin's here for that. That's exactly what he's looking for. So, yeah, being able to kind of, again, you're relying on him not taking too much damage before he flips over, or maybe having some form of healing that's not him to bring him back up to a good level once he's in that possessed form. But he can be really obnoxious to take down once he gets there, and he's got that charge to get himself back onto the points as well. So that's quite nice for him too. Handing out shocks again, just kind of helping with the bulkiness of your entire team. So yeah, I quite like him with Kingpin. Other leaderships, I actually really like him with Shadowland Daredevil. Same logic I was giving with the Zemo and Strucker rerolls, where making more attacks when it's not a once per turn reroll is really really good. Slightly less value, I think, from Modocs for a similar reason. Still not bad, and actually can be nice for making sure you get that rapid fire. If you get a wild but you don't get a hit, you can kind of use that to guarantee it. But otherwise, not too crazy value. Still not bad. Again, just kind of a generically solid leadership, but not as good as many other cases where you only have you're making less but more meaningful attacks. I think are ones where leaderships like that, where they're once per turn, kind of get a little bit more value. And then you also have claws, which exists, and uh, it's not even loading, so I can't even confirm anything about it. Right. Claus is exactly what I thought. When an ally character is dazed or KO'd, he gets to do things. I guess he's actually not that good for that because he's kind of annoying to daze or KO, so you're not going to trigger your leadership too often. This isn't really a leadership though, so I mean, it's not really something that other models can actively support aside from like having grunts or something. So, yeah, we're not going to talk too much about that one. But yeah, I do think he's a solid model here. That aside, I think his healing is really, really nice in like a Kingpin Crimson, where you're running tons of bulkier models. Again, you have some of those models that we talked about in Cabal here as well. You have stuff like Crossbones, Omega Red, even Kingpin himself. So you have some of those models. Rhino, I think, could potentially get a lot of mileage out of that healing. Ulik again. Sandman could be kind of interesting with the healing too. A big health pool that he's always kind of cutting into for his own things, so being able to kind of bring him back up a little bit is relatively nice. So I think there's a lot of value to the healing here. And once again, he's just providing you with a Mystic Attacker because they really don't have very many of them. Actually, looking through, they have almost none. It looks like Loki, Modok, and maybe Elektra. I think Elektra has one. Yeah. But very, very few. So definitely giving you a nice low threat Mystic Attacker option if that's something like you're feeling you're needing. So yeah, really, really solid for that reason as well. Looking at other affiliations that he could be potentially interesting as a splash in. One of the things I just kind of thought of that I think is kind of funny is actually bringing him somewhere like Thralls of Dracula, where Dracula himself has healing for other characters within three of him that have bleed. That does include allies with bleed, so you heal up a bunch of your models and then they heal Dracula, which is kind of cool. I mean, it's kind of what the leadership's already doing for him, but you kind of get to double dip on it, so that could be kind of neat. In a similar vein, you do have Midnight Suns, where Blade is going to benefit in very much the same way. But I also actually think he benefits a lot from the Midnight Suns leadership as well. That ability to bump around is going to give him a little bit of extra mobility on his normal mode, help him get into range, make sure he's making those attacks. So I do like him a fair bit there. Again, you have some models that are going to be immune to the bleed there, really just Ghost Rider, but also just models that appreciate the healing. Immortal Hulk getting some extra healing in there, especially once he's got that immortality token and your opponent's trying to finish him off, can be huge. Pair him up with Wong, and now you've got 5 damage healing per round, which is kind of absurd. I think adding Doctor Strange to that is probably overkill. But yeah, actually weird. Midnight Suns has two of the only healing characters in the game, but yeah, if you stack them in there, it could be pretty obnoxious. So I think that could be a fun combo for him. Not necessarily sure if it's the best, but it's definitely solid. As mainly an Avengers player, I've definitely thought about him in Avengers before as well. He can benefit from a couple of the leaderships here. I actually think he benefits from all three of the main leaderships reasonably well. Making the healing cheaper is, of course, nice, or his charge once he gets to his other side. So that's pretty solid, but I think it's kind of one of the weaker arguments for him. With Sam, though, I think he provides a really cool Mystic Attacker, and he is reasonably bulky, and he's lower threat, which is kind of exactly the types of things that Sam is looking for. So I think he's pretty solid there. And then you also have Original Steve, which I think is actually really interesting with a spender, being able to kind of say, okay, no, I needed that wild, so I got that wild, and there's 2 damage on your other model and an extra damage on the primary target. Just a really solid combo in my opinion. So yeah, I actually really like him here, and I'm kind of surprised I haven't actually tried him out more in Avengers myself. Outside of that, though, I don't think there's too many places that are kind of specifically saying like, "Hey, Hood would really benefit from our leadership here," because I think what Hood's trying to do is he's more of a piece that's going to come in and support the rest of your game plan rather than be supported by the things you're already doing. So I think he's one of those models that if you're looking for a healing mystic attacker that can be reasonably annoying to take down, he's a very solid splash just about anywhere. You're going to have to keep in mind that some leaderships are going to synergize with him better than others. Just kind of from the way his attack profiles work, once per turn attack bonuses and things like that aren't as good for him, but they're still not actively bad. And he's just kind of a great model to just kind of slap it and be like, hey, he's going to heal your dudes. He's going to sit on some points, and he's just generally going to be a really awkward model for your opponent to deal with if they don't have the right tools to deal with him. He's not going to be an every game piece in a lot of those scenarios. If you're seeing models on your opponent's side of the table that are just, full of mystic attacks or something like that, so they're never going to be able to, you're never going to be able to keep him in possessed form. Maybe not the play, but I think he's a really, really solid option in a lot of different places, especially if you're lacking mystic attacks and you're just looking for some way to kind of make up for that. He can fill that hole and then some with that healing that he brings in. So lots of great reasons to kind of consider him in a lot of different places. But yeah, that is just about going to do it for Mr. Robbins here. Um, at the end of the day here, I think we're looking at a character that has some really cool utility. He does a lot of different things, and he does a lot of things that really, really well and very interesting things, like stuff that a lot of other models don't really bring to the table, or they do, but they definitely don't bring as many of them. Between the arcs to throw splash damage out, reasonably consistent splash damage too. Again, less so on the 6 dice version, but the 8 dice pretty solid and a good amount of damage too. You're throwing lots of semi-ranged mystic attacks, which is kind of cool. You've got the healing, you've got the defensive tech, you've got that reduced by 2 on the flip side. I keep doing that to flip them instead of clicking the possessed. Um, he's got a lot of really cool utility that he's bringing to the table that not a lot of other models can kind of provide. You could bring like 4 different models to do the same things Hood's doing, and obviously, if you're bringing 4 different models, you're probably still getting more value than you'd be getting out of a single 3 threat. But he's a great multi-tool. He can kind of slot into a lot of different places and do a lot of different things, which is one of the things that makes him really, really fun to play. And it makes him really interesting for your opponent to think about, because they see a Hood on the other side of the table and they have to think about, what you're planning on doing with him. Is he going to be healing this game? Are you trying to get him to go in? Do they wanna punch him and get you to switch him to possessed form, or do they wanna, so then you're not healing, or do they want to ignore him so you're not getting into this higher damage form? So definitely some things your opponent has to think about. Does put a lot of agency into their hands. They have a lot of control over which form he's in and when, so I'm gonna have to keep that in mind. Anything you can do to kind of manipulate your opponent's models to be in the form you want to be in when you want to be in it is going to be relatively meaningful. But definitely stuff you have to consider when playing him, because he's not really just a plug and play character. But yeah, I think I've said most of the things I have to say about Mr. Hood here. I really, really like him. I think he's a lot of fun. And after making this video, I actually kind of want to try and squeeze him into a few other rosters and see if I can get some more table time with him, because he's been a blast every time I've played him. I've never had a bad experience with him. So definitely recommend, if you're on the fence, you picked up the Voodoo Hood box a while ago and maybe you just haven't tried putting Hood on the table yet. Definitely recommend playing around with him, because he has a ton of fun to play with and he does a lot of really, really cool things. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of Hood down below. Where you guys have seen success with him. Definitely curious to hear what you guys think. If there's any synergies or anything like that that I missed, very, very curious to see where you guys are running him. But that is going to do it for my part of this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please do drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We do character spotlights like these, as well as a bunch of other discussion focused content during the weekdays. And then we got battle reports on the weekends. So if you're a fan of any of that sort of thing, feel free to jump on in. But that's going to do it for me. So until next time, have a great day, everybody. Peace.